Hey guys. Uh, Thanks so much for coming out. So I'm Rich Vreeland, and I did the music for Fez, which is a Xbox Live game. And just a quick warning, there's probably going to be some spoilers. Hope you don't mind. So one of the things I want to talk about is what I consider to be one of the overarching problems with trying to create music for this game. And that was how to create a strong narrative with locational music in a non-linear game. So in Fez, for the most part, you explore the world and you do it in a non-linear way. So there's, with the exception of the very beginning of the game and the very end of the game, you can kind of go wherever you want. There's no real consequences for doing things out of order. So I wanted to think about some ideas for how to tackle that and how to make it, how to tell a story in that sort of situation. So the ideas that I came up with were to, give the big picture in the linear moments. So the linear moments were, the very beginning, like establishing your character and what your goal is, and the ending of the game. Like the last couple of places that you encounter, and then tell side stories everywhere else. So since you're experiencing everything else sort of non-linearly, and they're not not everyone's going to sort of tackle those in the same way. Just try to find in the individual sections ways that you can inform the overall story. And foreshadow where you can. So one of the things I tried to do is, like, if there's something that's happening later that's somehow related to where you are now, try to foreshadow using the music. So there's one example where there's, towards the end of the game, there's this area where you find this ancient civilization, and you've sort of been in this place before, but it was ruined. So just the idea of using like motifs in music, having like common threads that sort of, kind of move through the whole experience, where you have like a musical idea that you're hearing, in the ruins area, and then you hear it way later in the game, and it's like, oh, there's a connection there. So first, I'm going to talk about the beginning. So the first couple of levels. So just to sort of set up what happens after the very beginning. This is when you first start the game, you're sort of in your home village. It's where you've always been. You've only really known what it's like to be a two-dimensional character. And then as the game progresses, you sort of learn that there's another dimension, and you sort of use that to traverse through the game. So to start, this is just a quick clip of the music for the home area. Okay, so like right after you leave the village for the first time, there's a piece of music that plays, and it's based on the where you just came from. So the idea was that you're only ever going to be in this place experiencing this certain mood once, where you're leaving somewhere that you've always been for the first time. So I sort of saw that as a opportunity to do something beyond just writing locational music. Like, I saw it as an opportunity to try to inform the story of what's going on. So what happens is you hear the song once, and as you as you leave this area, if you ever come back to it, it's just going to be ambience. So it's like a way to sort of kind of tie into the whole like this is a linear part of the game where everyone's sort of experiencing this in the same way, and this is how we can inform the story. So this song is called Reflection. So hopefully you can hear how there's some carryover there. Okay, so after you leave that area, you get to this area it's kind of like the hub. It's like the central area of the whole world, and this is kind of like where the world is opening up, and now you can sort of go to all these different little like sections of the world from this one place. So this is kind of like the last. This is kind of the last place in the beginning of the game that you could say this is going to be experienced linearly, like by everyone in the same order. So I wanted to kind of I wanted to convey the sense of that, like, you know, everything's just about to open up, and this is kind of like your new home base. So I wanted to do something that sounded stable and uplifting. So that was kind of the idea for this track. Okay, so let's talk about the end. So this is that moment I was telling you about. It's where you discover this ancient village that the game sort of foreshadows in the places that you've been before that. So this is like a clear high point in the story. It's supposed to feel like a huge discovery. Like you finally found this thing that you've been sort of. If you play the game, there's all these little like mentions of it, and like there's like symbols and things that you can sort of uncover. So this is sort of the beginning of the end. So I wanted to use this not only to sort of represent the location, but also to be like, this is an important moment. You should remember this, and it's foreshadowed by music in other parts of the game. One thing I should mention is that a lot of the music in this game is very laid back. It's very kind of atmospheric. So these moments are definitely more like energetic to kind of stand out. So after you move there, you kind of go through this crazy gate, this like portal that takes you to this other planet. And this is kind of like the source. This level is like the source of great power in the Fez universe. It's like this like otherworldly alien sort of area that you're exploring. So one of the things that we did is we kind of said let's do something musical here, but let's sort of combine it with a sound design aspect where you're sort of tapping into this giant tower of energy type thing. And let's kill all the sound effects. So in this is supposed to be like an outer space. So this is like the one area in the whole game where there's no sound effects. It's just you're like jump and nothing. There's no sounds. It's just like you're floating. So that was a conscious decision to kind of reinforce that. And the musical element in this is actually the main motif of the game. So like when you start up the game, there's a piece of music that plays, and that's like the theme of the game, the theme song. So this is like the only other place where you hear it. It's at the very end of the game. And they're just kind of like trying to tie things together. And then there's the stories in between, all the different places that you go on the way. And I think all these areas that you sort of experience out of order, there's still potential to tell parts of the whole story, but you just have to think of them in a little bit different way. You have to think of them as like these little like self-contained moments that may be able to inform a larger whole. So here's one example. This is like a nature area of the game, and by itself it doesn't tell too much of a story. So I wanted to kind of like impose a story onto it, and this is kind of one of the ways you can kind of I guess enhance something. So during the day, there's one piece of music that plays, and then during night, another piece of music plays. So during the day, it's kind of quiet and playful and like do whatever, and then at night it gets more serious and it's like the animals have come out to dance or like feast or something. So this is I think this is the night version, and I'll play the day version later. So one of the kinds of levels that you encounter quite a lot in Fez is a puzzle level, and they're sort of scattered all over the world, so you can kind of find them in nooks and crannies everywhere. So one of the things I wanted to do with puzzle levels is sort of mimic what an actual puzzle is, which in Fez's case is generally lots of shifting, interlocking elements. So for the puzzle music, what we ended up doing is creating all these shifting, interlocking elements, like 7 different kinds of instruments, each with their own part, and each part is like a different length. So there are some parts that are like 4 bars, and some that are 5 bars, and some are 3, and some are 7. And then figuring out like how can we use the technology that we have to kind of stretch this as far as possible. So one of the cool things about working on Fez is the music system is very robust. The programmer Renaud Bedard, he created a like a proprietary music tool on top of the Exact tool from Microsoft, and the tool does all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'll actually show you that a little bit later. One of the things it does is it you can change the music depending on what time of day it is. So it recognizes that the day is made up of 4 different quadrants. So it's like it's dawn, and then it's day, and then it's dusk, and then it's night. So you can kind of have the music change depending on what time of day it is. You can say, I want these assets to play during this time of day, and then I want it to fade into this section of the song, and then I want it to fade into this section of the song. So what we did for this is we've got the 7 layers of music, but in 3 different musical modes. So during I think the morning and the day, it plays in a certain kind of mode. I think it plays I think it starts in Aeolian, and then it moves to no, it starts in Dorian, and then it goes to like Locrian, and then it goes to Aeolian. And you can kind of set up each individual track to have its own logic. So like you can say this one's gonna wait after this individual track plays. It's gonna wait 2 bars before it starts again, and this one that's 3 bars long is gonna wait 4 bars before it starts again. So you can get these like complex kind of like interlocking sounds, which is cool. So I'll play the 3 modes for you, just with all the assets kind of lined up starting at the beginning, and then I'll play what they might sound like when they're kind of shifting around. So that's the Aeolian one that plays at night. So depending on what time of day, you'll be like living in a certain key. It's kind of funny too because the puzzles are all indoors, so it's not really like obvious what time of day it is. It's kind of just like using that system for the hell of it. Unless you're like really crazy, I guess you could be like, "Oh, this is Locrian. I know that means it's 7 p.m. or something." But I seriously doubt that people play the game that way. And then this is just an example of like staggered elements, like how it might actually sound in the game. So this one's fun. There's a whole section of the game that's like a graveyard. And for the graveyard, the idea that I had was, what if it's actually raining in the graveyard too when you play it, and there's like a thunderstorm. So the idea was, what if we, in order to sort of like enhance that and to kind of tell a story with the music, what if the music actually sounds like a storm as well? Like have the music behavior mimic what a thunderstorm would sound like, where you have a transient like a boom, and then you hear the rain, and you're not sure when the next boom is going to come. So the music system actually lets you do that. So you can be like, we're going to wait. We don't know when the next one's going to happen. It'll just happen within like a range. So that was pretty cool that we were able to get that in. It was really nice to work with Renaud because I'd have an idea like that, and I'd be like, hey, can we do this thing? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then like 30 minutes later, I'd be like, oh, it's in there. I was like, oh, yes. This is so fun. So I think this is going to be the chord. So you're just going to hear one of the chords. So the way it works is that it uses 8 assets, and each asset is a chord. It's like a boom, and it's a chord, but it also has like a bit of a percussive element to it. And then as it dies out, you just hear like beep, 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 like all these like little notes, like arpeggiated. And they're really long, so you can kind of say, oh, I want to cut it here, or want to trigger the next one here, or wherever you want. And I've got a video too from YouTube, with no speaking, of course. Thank God. And it's just the system, in action, so you can kind of get a feel for it. This owl's really creepy, by the way. He always looks at you no matter where you're facing. Okay, I think you get the idea. Okay, so before I was telling you about the village, like the ancient village that you find with all the people. So there's other section of the game that's supposed to be the same place, but in the in the present, and it's all ruined. It's like like if you see that door down there, it's all broken and stuff. So this section of the game uses the same motif as like the ancient village that you find, and you get to it a lot earlier in the game. So the idea was we'll use this as foreshadowing that you're going to return to this place, and it's going to be much more majestic. So on top of that, I was thinking about like this is about memories. It's about like we talked about. Like myself and Phil, the designer, we talked about how Gomez, the main character, visiting this place, he had like a repressed memory or something of this place. Like he knew that it existed, like in its golden age or whatever. So I wanted to make the music sort of like wispy, and like it comes and goes like a faint memory. Like that was the idea. So we actually were able to use the same system that we used in the graveyard music, where something comes in and then you don't know when the next one's going to come in, but we use that same mechanic in a very different way, because this is much more laid back, and it's kind of like, I don't know, laid back. So this is what that sounds like. Yeah, so just kind of picture that little motif happening. Like there are 4 different versions of that same motif with slightly different, chords and stuff. And there's sort of a window where the next one can happen. And sometimes you won't hear another one for like 10, 15 seconds. Sometimes you'll hear them maybe a couple seconds in between. So it's kind of has this like, it kind of comes and goes, which has like a nice feel to it. So this was probably my favorite track to work on in the game. There's this area of the game. It's a secret level, and it's just all glitched out. So like the level uses tiles from all the other levels in the game, and it just like flickers them crazy constantly. And you're trying to like navigate through this insane space where like your vision is constantly like obscured by these tiles. So the first thought that came to my mind was, we should mimic that with the music. So what if I did a track that's just a mashup track? It just uses elements from all the other tracks in the game. So there's no like new stuff in this. It's just made up entirely of material from other tracks and then like all glitched out and crazy. And this is what that sounds like. So it like pulls like melodies from different levels and supporting elements from different levels. They're all kind of happening at once. You'll hear some of that later, actually. The main one that it uses is something I'm going to talk about in a second. And it's about music gameplay. So there's one area in Fez that actually has music gameplay, which is really cool. It's a level or it's a series of levels where there are platforms that appear and disappear on a rhythm. So the level has an inherent tempo. I think it's like 120 BPM or whatever. So we had to create a song that was 120 BPM and then create sound effects that lasted beats. So like sound effects that lasted a half note or sound effects that lasted a whole note or what have you, and make them musical and have them interact with the music in a pleasing way. So I'm going to play this video of this area and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. One of the other things to listen for in this is there's a system that lets you add layers as you get higher. So you can be like, when you get past this altitude, add this track. So as you get higher in this level, it adds more musical elements. This guy sucks. All right. For the sake of time, I'm gonna skip ahead. So this is a screenshot from Fezzer, which is the Fez editor that the programmer created and the designer would use to like create levels and stuff. And the music system is built into that. And this is one of the offshoot features of the music system. I'm actually gonna use my mouse here so you can. So like you'll click on platform blocks, and then you can create sequences of notes. So these two things here, 3x_3 and 3x_4, those are actually sound effects. They're like those the things that happen on beat. So you can go in and like set sequences for all the different platforms in the level. So it was kind of an interesting challenge because you had to think about, instead of thinking about order, like when things happen in the music, it was more about proximity. Like which notes do I want to happen near other notes so that they sound pleasing, which is kind of a weird thing to think about with music. So that's pretty much how that works. And then this is how the altitude stuff works. You put these little blocks in the level, like floating invisible blocks, and they're basically like conditional blocks where it's like if you get higher than this block, you can tell it to do something. If you get lower, you can tell it to do something. So like, you know, these are just scripts that it runs where it checks when it's higher or lower and does something. So most of them are just you know, fade in or out a piece of an element of the music depending on where you are. So I'm going to talk a little bit, maybe not too much, about the music system because I've told you guys some of it already. So this is what the music system looks like. It's super awesome. It does everything. So you can load in as many loops as you want, and then so you have like the window of all the different loops, and then to the right of that you have a bunch of stuff about timing logic. So there's stuff about like trigger between or after every 0 and 16 bars. So what that means is it's saying when that individual loop stops playing, it's going to say, oh, we're gonna decide randomly between this range of 0 or 16 bars to re-trigger it. So this is actually these assets are actually the assets for the puzzle music. So you can see like there's a bunch of them that say Aeolian, a bunch that say Dorian, a bunch that say Locrian, and then below that, below the pull down stuff for looping, where you can kind of determine, you know, how much to wait and when to start and that kind of stuff. You can see there's checkboxes for day, night, dawn, or dusk, and you can just say, oh, this one's only going to play at day. This one's only going to play during the night. This one's going to play dusk and dawn. So you can kind of use the system in a lot of different ways. Like you don't have to just say, you know, this time of day is going to be in this key and this time of day is going to be in this key. You can actually use it to have a single piece of music that like changes, you know, you just have stuff coming in and out different times a day. You can use it to like have a whole series of levels that you're moving through, and just you can kind of, there are a lot of different possibilities with it, which is what I'm getting at, which was super fun to work with. And obviously without this, a lot of the cool stuff that we were able to do would not have happened. So it was really nice having like a programmer on the project who is super passionate about audio. It's important if you can find someone. Good luck. What else? Oh, so at the very bottom, there's a bunch of pull downs that say assemble chord and then shard notes. So if any of you have played Fez, the main object of Fez is collecting these like little cubes, and you collect 8 and it forms a bigger cube. So for that we thought, oh, it'd be cool if you did like a scale, like, you know, da 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 da, when you collect each individual note. But the problem with that was that, well, we can't just have C major scale over every song. It's going to sound like butt. So we talked about it, and we agreed that it would be cool to have the functionality where you could change the scale that it's using depending on what song you're playing. So that got us a lot further. And that works like 50% of the time, which is better than 0 or like 1%. Because there's the other problem that we didn't get a chance to kind of correct is that a lot of the songs change keys, which is something that I do all the time because it's fun. And I didn't think I should have thought about it maybe from the beginning. Like, what if I just wrote everything in the same key? But that might not have been as interesting musically. So yeah. Musical arsenal. Having a musical arsenal was really important for this project for me. I think all of us as composers have lots of ways that we can solve problems. Like there are a lot of different techniques and ways that you can sort of tackle something. You can write at a keyboard, or you can hum something, or you can bang on your knee, or you know, there are a lot of different ways that you can kind of express your creativity. And then having a music system on top of that really opens things up. Like it's like taking all the your entire arsenal and like doubling it. Like having all these ways that you can do cool interactive things in terms of working on a game. So freedom to experiment, plus robust music system equals win. Using dusty ideas. So musical ideas, generally speaking, unless they were awesome when you wrote them and then you come back to them later and they're really bad, with that exception, they generally don't have an expiration date. So record all the things, or yeah, that's what I do. You don't have to do it, but I think it's cool. Yeah, at any time I played something that I thought had merit, I'd saved it. Pretty much since I started, I've pretty much been doing that, and it's been really helpful. Like there's been so many times when I had creative block, and I was like, what? Let me just go through my big like archive of like unused ideas, and then I like find something. This is perfect. I'll use this. This will be awesome. So I'm just going to give you a couple quick before and afters. So this track, Nocturne, it came out of a piano improvisation that I did like 6 years ago, way before Fez, and I never found a place for it. I always thought it was cool. So this is what it sounded like when I recorded it on a really shitty microphone. And this is what it sounds like in the game. I've got another one, but I'm going to skip it for the sake of time. Yeah, so this might be common sense if you're good at playing instruments, but I'm not, so it wasn't. But improvising was one of the most crucial things that I decided to start doing when I was working on this project. There were songs where I had an aesthetic, or there was a patch or something that just really like spoke to me, and I just wanted to mess with it, and then I'd come up with something cool, and I was like, oh, this is it, this is the thing, done. That was easy. I mean, it's not super common that happens, but every once in a while you get lucky. So there's this one track called Spirit, and I was messing with this contact script called Pentagonal Pyramid from Sonic Couture. I don't know if you guys know Sonic Couture. They do some like they do cool like sample libraries and stuff, and they also have this contact script suite that they released. And this particular script, what it does is it generates pentatonic chords on top of every note that you play. So it has this really cool like Debussy kind of feel to it. So I just like press record and play some random stuff, and I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. And this is what that sounds like. And this is another one. This is actually the daytime version of the nature track that I played. And basically all it was is I was like, what if I just like press record and like play a little whatever, like a little bloop, and then come back around and play another little bloop and just keep doing that, like just using my ears. And I kind of came up with this like crazy, I don't know, kind of soundscape. Check it out. So, should you write with reckless abandon? I think the answer is yes and no. Or at least for me, it was yes and no. So early on in the project, it was super useful to write with reckless abandon. You know, there's so much real estate in front of you, like so many things you have to do, so many songs and so many different locations and everything. So, you know, I think there's real value in I'm just going to write in this general style of the game, just write what I want. And if you're lucky, which I was a couple times and a couple times maybe not so lucky, you know, you find a place for it that fits really well. So yeah, writing to your heart's content can produce good results. When you get to the end of the project, it becomes really hard to do that because obviously you're limited. You maybe you have like 2 or 3 things you need to do, and if you just like close your eyes and write stuff, it's probably not going to work. You probably need a focus of some kind. Actually, the first song that I wrote for the game, it's called Adventure, and it's kind of been like the song that people associate with the soundtrack because it's kind of it's high energy, kind of accessible, but it's not actually in the game at all. It was the first thing I wrote. It was like this is what I feel about Fez. Like this is the sound that I feel, and it turned out that there wasn't a place for it. What we ended up doing was putting it in the credits, which turned out okay. So this is something written with reckless abandon. There's this sort of sound effect. It kind of started as like, what if I do the THX sound? That'd be fun. Okay. And then I just started messing with it and turning it into this chord thing and doing all this stuff. And I kind of gave it to them early on and like, we don't know what to do with this thing that you made. So I kind of just put it in a level somewhere, like randomly. Well, not super randomly, but I was like, there's this area that's like a gate or like a portal, and this sound kind of sounds like a portal, and it doesn't like fit really, so I'll just put it here for now and then come back to it later. And then one day, I'm playing the game, just play testing, and I go to this level with the portal, and all of a sudden, like the music is synced perfectly to like this crazy like portal that's like rotating, and I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. I was like, what happened? And he's like, oh, I decided to like sync this up for you. And I was like, oh, I love you, thank you. That's so awesome. So yeah, this is an example of, you know, just writing something from the hip and it working out.
Oh my goodness. This is that finished portal that they were working on in the future.
You'll hear some low pass filtering too when you're obstructed,
right,
which is kind of cool.
In the future version of this world, this exact room is the one with all the black holes in it.
Which makes me wonder, in us using it right now, can we cause the black hole?
Yes.
Back in time, I guess.
This is why we don't try to backtrace the internet. But for science. Because it's a Star game. That's what they do. The moon. It was a gate. It's a portal to the...
It's a portal to the moon. So yeah, recorded all the things. So this is kind of in the same vein as using Dusty Ideas, just always recording stuff. Perfect ideas rarely came at perfect times. You know, they come when you're like trying to go to sleep or you're in the bathroom or you're at a party or on the subway. Just record things everywhere, anywhere you possibly can, so you don't forget it, because good ideas are worth remembering. Some quick examples. There's a track in the game that was played drunkenly at a party, and I recorded it. And there were a lot of times where I'd be writing a different song for the game, and like in between I was working on it, I'd just be like, do. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I'll just record it at the end of this session and then like, you know, pull it out and turn it into a new thing. So one thing about the game, silence. Silence was very important for Fez. There are about 150 levels in Fez, and 20% of those levels have no music at all. And I think I love using silence. I think silence is an underutilized concept in game music. I feel like a lot of games just kind of like plaster sound at you, and you're just like you get super fatigued. And yeah, and I also think that hearing something too frequently lessens its value. And when you can kind of pick your spots, people will appreciate the music more. And a nice bonus is that when you don't have music, someone else's work gets the spotlight for a little while. Like my friend Brandon McCartan, who did the sound effects, you get to hear his work more clearly when you're not like stealing all the real estate. So that's nice. One last thing I'm going to talk about is music secrets. Hey Phil, Phil's the designer. I have an idea. What if we put a puzzle in the music? That's an awesome idea. Let's do it. So what we did, we were talking about a way to put a puzzle in the soundtrack, and we kept coming back to stuff that's been done in the past, like Square Pusher and other dudes who like put images in the that you can see in a spectrograph. So Phil created this puzzle out of all these images, sent me these images. I have no idea how to solve the puzzle. I don't think anyone's solved the puzzle, actually. And I put them in silent moments in the album and ducked them way down, like 60, 70 dB, like as low as it can go, where you could still actually pull it up if you boost the amplitude. And of course, oh, this is a video actually. So this is the next day after we did it. Like 6 hours later. Some dude just happened to be listening to the Fez soundtrack in a spectrograph. Like, who does that? It's like so random. This is a Chopin tune, by the way. I did not write this. I just arranged it. Holy Gomez dump. I don't know what that means. But yeah, don't underestimate the internet. We thought it would take them forever to figure this out. It took them like a couple hours. They're like, oh, look, I found 27 images in the soundtrack. You found all of them in like a couple hours? That's amazing. So yeah, fail. And there's a picture of John Locke, who's hidden in the soundtrack. They haven't solved the puzzle yet, though, which is awesome. So maybe one day. And that's all I got. Thanks, guys.